Imagine
Accepted
burying your father
immediately
on a
as your son
Tuesday
has been
while
removed
your
from the board
husband
of
stands a few
directors
feet away,
following the discovery
holding a
of
separate
significant
umbrella.
financial irregularities.
Then on
To the
Wednesday,
future,
that
darling.
same husband files for divorce, promising child support like some
And
kind
to
of
us.
consolation prize.
This is
By
strictly a
Friday,
business
he is
matter.
already married to someone
My
new.
lawyers will be in touch.
What he did not count on,
Marcus,
what never
please, you
crossed
can't
his
do
mind,
this.
was that the quiet janitor who raised her was actually a billionaire in hiding. And the moment he stepped into that glamorous gala with his new wife, he made a mistake that would ruin him forever. Now, before we see how this unfolds, if you have ever been underestimated for being the quiet one,
Birds!
drop a
Pretty
comment
birds!
and tell
It's
us
a
where you
perfect
are
day for the
watching from.
park.
Let's see if loyalty and patience still have a place in this world, because what happens next will make you question everything. This is a story about the quiet power of patience, the true meaning of legacy, and why the people who underestimate you always regret it. If you have ever felt invisible, overlooked, or abandoned when you needed someone the most, this story was made for you. He was no longer breathing on his own. Machines were doing the work for him. Maya gripped the cold metal rail of the hospital bed, her knuckles turning white. She listened to the artificial sounds that filled the room, the hiss of the ventilator, the steady beep of the heart monitor, the boring hum of the overhead lights. Her father's chest moved up and down, but it was a mechanical motion, not life. "Daddy," she whispered, her face so close she could smell the sterile scent of the hospital on his skin. "Please, just fight one more time." She held his hand, which was still warm. It felt rough from a lifetime of hard work. A hand that felt strong enough to hold on, yet not strong enough to wake up. The doctor's words were gentle and clinical. He said things like declining and unresponsive. But those words were too soft for the harsh truth. Her father was dying, and no polite phrasing could change that fact. Maya had been at the hospital for 48 hours without a break. She had not slept or eaten a real meal. She survived on bitter coffee and the painful chairs in the waiting room. Her husband, Marcus, had sent 2 texts. The first asked if she needed anything. The second said he would be late. She ignored both messages. Beyond the hospital walls, the city was alive. You could hear cars honking and people laughing. The world went on, completely unaware that hers was falling apart. But inside that room, time moved differently. It was slow and heavy. It felt like the weight of the world was pressing down on her, seeing just how much she could take before she shattered. Her father raised her all by himself. He never had help, and he never complained. He just gave her a quiet, dependable love that was there for her every single day. At 7 years old, he showed her how to tie her shoes. At 12, he taught her how to change a car tire. When she was 16, he explained that the loudest people in a room often have the least important things to say. And when she was 23 and announced she was getting married, he did not immediately approve. He paused and watched Marcus carefully during dinner. He asked questions that seemed a little too pointed back then. Afterwards, he hugged her and told her, "I trust you to know what is in your own heart." He did not say he trusted Marcus. A nurse moved silently in the dim room, checking machines and adjusting lines. Her eyes avoided Maya's. She had seen this ending too many times before. Maya felt her phone vibrate, but ignored it. Suddenly, her father's fingers moved. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she leaned in close. "Dad." His lips formed words without sound. She strained to hear, desperate for anything. He gave her 3 words, slow and full of effort. His final gift, "Go to bank." And then the alarms began to scream. Nurses rushed into the room, pushing Maya out into the hallway. She could only stand there, helpless, waiting for news she already knew in her soul. Her father was gone, and his last words were a complete mystery. Growing up, Maya believed that every father worked two jobs. Hers certainly did. She could still picture him coming home, exhausted, but always having a warm smile just for her. She thought every dad could fix a broken pipe and tell the most magical bedtime stories. Hers did. He was a janitor at the local school by day and a maintenance man at the church 3 nights a week. On weekends, he fixed things for neighbors who could not afford to pay. They paid him instead with homemade dinners, deep gratitude, and endless respect. He never appeared tired or angry. He simply worked, came home, cooked for them, and asked about her day as if it was the most important news in the world. Their apartment was tiny, with only one bedroom. That bedroom was hers. For 16 years, he slept on the couch and never once complained. They did not have a lot of money, but everything they owned was spotless, organized, and cared for. Her father folded his work uniforms with the same precision other men reserved for expensive suits. He shined his work boots every single Sunday night. On the kitchen fridge, a calendar marked all of her school events in bright red ink. He never, ever missed one. Other children had parents who arrived in fancy clothes, wearing expensive watches and driving new cars. Her father would show up in his janitor uniform, smelling faintly of cleaning supplies, and sit in the very back row so he would not embarrass her. But she was never embarrassed, not for a single moment, because while other parents were checking their phones during the school play, her father watched her as if she were the only person on the entire stage. He also taught her things a janitor should not have known. Things like how to read a complicated contract, how to tell if someone was being dishonest by watching their hands instead of their eyes. He taught her how to enter a room and immediately know who had real influence and who was just pretending. "Money talks, baby girl," he would say while they washed the dinner dishes together, "but character whispers, and the only people worth your time are the ones who can hear the whisper." She did not understand most of it back then, but she never forgot a word. The day she was accepted into college, he began to cry. They were not tears of sadness, but tears of pure pride, the kind of tears that made his entire face look soft and gentle. "You're going to do things I was never able to do," he told her. "You did everything," she replied. He just shook his head. "No, I simply chose a different path. There is a big difference." She never asked him to explain what he meant. Now she desperately wishes that she had. Looking back, there were so many moments that just did not make sense. The way he spoke, the classic books he read, the strange way the tellers at the bank always knew his name. Her father was not just a janitor. He was a janitor for a reason, and she was about to discover why. It was pouring rain on the day of his funeral, not a gentle, sad rain. This was an angry storm, the kind of rain that soaks you to the bone and turns the ground into thick, heavy mud. It made you feel like the sky itself was angry with the world. Maya stood by the grave, 6 months pregnant. Her husband, Marcus, stood beside her, holding his own umbrella. She noticed it right away, not because she wanted a grand romantic gesture. She noticed because when a strong gust of wind blew rain into her face, he did not even flinch. He did not move to shield her. He just stood there, perfectly dry, scrolling on his phone. One by one, people offered their condolences and gave her a hug. They said all the things you are supposed to say. He is in a better place now. At least his suffering is over. God has a new angel. She just nodded and thanked them, letting them believe their words were a comfort. But what she really wanted to scream was, "He is not in a better place. The better place was right here, with me." He was supposed to be here to watch me become a mother. He was supposed to meet his grandchild. He was supposed to stay. Marcus checked his watch 2 times during the short service. When the pastor invited people to share their favorite memories, Marcus remained completely silent. Maya spoke about her father's hands. She described how they were never still, always fixing things, always building, always there to steady her own when they trembled. Her voice broke in the middle of a sentence, and she had to sit down. Marcus never reached for her hand. As the casket was lowered into the ground, she moved forward to place a single rose on top. The heels of her shoes sank deep into the mud. She started to fall. An older woman from her father's church grabbed her arm, holding her steady. "I have got you, honey," she whispered. Marcus did not even seem to notice. After the service, everyone gathered at the church for something to eat. There were sandwiches that nobody wanted, and coffee that quickly turned cold. People were talking in voices that felt far too loud for such a sad day. Maya sat alone in a corner, completely drained, gently rubbing her stomach. The baby was kicking more than usual, as if it could sense that something was terribly wrong. Marcus finally found her after 20 minutes. "I need to go," he said. It was not a question, but a statement. She looked up at him, confused. "Right now? It is that work thing I told you about last week." She had no memory of it. Maybe he did tell me, she thought. Maybe the grief had wiped it from her mind. In the end, it did not really matter. "Okay," she said softly. He gave her a quick, routine kiss on the top of her head. It meant nothing. "I will see you at home tonight." But he did not come home. By 10 p.m., she was still alone in their apartment, wearing her black funeral dress, just staring at her phone. There was no text message, no phone call, and no explanation. There was only silence and a sudden, sharp realization. She had just buried the only man in her life who had ever truly been there for her. Her husband had checked out of their marriage a long time ago. She just had not been ready to admit it to herself until now. She found out the truth on Instagram, not from her husband, not in a conversation, not even through a friend, but from a photograph someone else posted. It was nearly midnight. She had finally taken off her funeral dress, washed the tear stains from her face, and climbed into her empty bed. Her entire body ached with sorrow. Her mind refused to shut down. She opened her phone just out of habit, scrolling endlessly to distract herself, trying not to think about her father being gone and her husband still not being home. And that is when she saw it, a picture of Marcus. He was sitting in a restaurant she knew was very expensive. The lighting was low, a candle flickered on the table, and he was sitting across from a woman she had never seen before. This was not a coworker. This was not a client. She was young, perfectly styled, the kind of beautiful that requires a lot of time and money. She was bent forward, laughing at something he had just said. He was leaning back in his chair, looking relaxed and smiling in a way Maya had not seen in months. The post was captioned, "New Beginnings," with emojis of clinking glasses and sparkles. It had been uploaded just an hour ago. Maya just stared at the picture on her screen until her eyes went out of focus. The tears did not come immediately. She simply sat there, clutching her phone, feeling the pulse of her own heart hammering in her throat. Her father had been laid to rest less than 12 hours before, and here was her husband, celebrating a fresh start. She clicked over to the woman's profile. Isabel Chun, a marketing executive with 73,000 followers. Every single photo was a perfect advertisement for a life Maya felt she could never attain. Maya scrolled backward through Marcus's recent online activity. She saw likes on Isabel's posts that dated back 3 entire months. She noticed comments that were overly familiar, a clear pattern that she had been either too naive or too exhausted to see before. Her hands began to tremble, not with sorrow, but with something much sharper, a feeling like her body was finally reacting to what her brain had refused to acknowledge. She stood up, walked into the bathroom, and gripped the edges of the sink, staring at her own reflection. Pregnant, worn out, completely alone, and married to a man who did not have the decency to wait even a single day after her father's funeral to take another woman out on the town. She did not throw anything, she did not scream, and she did not call him. She stood there, breathing in and out slowly, feeling the baby stir inside her. After a moment, she returned to the bedroom, placed her phone on the nightstand, and simply waited. Marcus arrived home at 2:14 in the morning. She heard the front door open, the sound of his keys hitting the counter, and his footsteps moving down the hallway. He did not come to check on her. He walked directly into the guest room. In that exact moment, Maya understood that their marriage was over. She just had not yet realized how much more difficult things were about to become. He waited until the next morning, not out of any sense of compassion, but because a coward needs the light of day to inflict his cruelty. Maya was in the kitchen, looking at a cup of coffee she had not touched. When Marcus entered, he appeared rested, freshly showered, and composed, as if he had practiced for this moment. "We should talk," he announced. She did not answer him. She just looked at him, waiting. He took a seat across from her, folding his hands on the table, as if this were a corporate negotiation. "I believe we are both aware that this is not working," he began. Her stomach felt like it dropped to the floor, but she kept her expression completely blank. "I have been unhappy for some time now, and I believe you have been as well. We just were not willing to face it." She almost let out a laugh. "We," as if this was a shared decision. As if she was the one who had been creating distance between them. "I want a divorce," he stated. His voice was flat and final. There was no sign of hesitation or regret. She felt the baby kick forcefully, as if even it sensed that something was terribly wrong. "You are being serious," she said in a low voice. "I am. My father just passed away 2 days ago. I know, I am sorry to hear that, but it does not change our situation." Our situation, as if their marriage was just some place they had both accidentally stumbled into. "I will provide for the baby," he went on, speaking as though he were outlining the terms of a contract. "Financially, I will not avoid that responsibility. But as for you and me, we are finished. I have met someone new. It is done." She stared at him, truly seeing him for the first time. This was the man she had placed her trust in, the man she had selected, the man who had vowed to be with her forever in the presence of everyone she cared about. And now he sat before her, perfectly calm, taking apart her entire life as if it were nothing more than paperwork. "I have already consulted with a lawyer," he added. "I will have all the documents prepared by the end of this week. You will not need to do very much." Just sign, she echoed. "Yes, I am trying to make this as painless as possible for you." Painless! She had an urge to scream, to hurl something at him. She wanted to demand how he could do this, at this time, in this manner, without even a hint of remorse. But she held back, because at that instant, a piece of advice her father often gave her surfaced in her memory. When a person reveals their true character to you, believe them the first time. Marcus had just revealed his, and she believed him. "Okay," she said. He blinked, clearly taken aback, as if he had been bracing for a confrontation. "Okay. Yes. If that is what you want, then okay." He rose from his chair, visibly relieved. "I am convinced this is the best course of action for the both of us." She offered no reply. He walked out of the room, then out of the apartment, leaving her there, 6 months pregnant and all alone. And that is when she recalled her father's final words to her. "Go to the bank." She put on her coat and walked out the door. If you believe that abandoning someone when they are at their most vulnerable is ever acceptable, continue listening, because the events that follow will force you to reconsider everything you thought you knew about loyalty. The bank did not have the feel of a typical bank. It felt more like a sanctuary where secrets were kept safe. Maya moved through the lobby, passing by marble pillars and chandeliers that looked far too lavish for an establishment that served ordinary customers. The soles of her sneakers made a squeaking noise on the gleaming floor. She felt completely out of her element, poorly dressed, and utterly unprepared. A woman in a perfectly fitted suit came toward her before she could even get to the main desk. "Miss Richardson." Maya paused. "Yes. We have been anticipating your arrival. Please, come with me." She had not called in advance or scheduled an appointment, yet somehow they were expecting her. They proceeded past the main service area, went through a secure door that needed a keycard, walked down a corridor that was unnervingly silent, and entered a private, windowless room. A man in his 60s stood up as she came in. He had gray hair, kind eyes, and the sort of deep calm that only comes from having experienced everything at least twice. "Miss Richardson," he said in a soft voice, "my name is Victor Kane. I have been managing your father's financial affairs for 32 years. I am deeply sorry for your loss." She gave a slight nod, feeling a lump in her throat. "He instructed me to come here. Just before he—" She could not bring herself to finish the sentence. Victor pointed to a chair. "He was certain you would. He put very clear instructions in place. He set a small metal box on the table that separated them. The words safety deposit box, number 1247, were engraved on its surface. This requires 2 keys to open," Victor clarified, taking one out of his jacket pocket. Yours was likely among his personal belongings. Maya rummaged through her purse and found the envelope the hospital staff had given to her. Inside was her father's wedding band, his watch, and a small brass key that she had not understood the significance of until this very moment. She passed it to Victor. He inserted both keys into their respective locks and turned them at the same time. The lock made a distinct clicking sound. Victor raised the lid and then took a step back. "I will leave you to have some privacy. Please take all the time you require." He exited the room, shutting the door behind him. Maya gazed at the box. Inside, there was a pile of documents fastened with a black paperclip, a sealed envelope with her name written in her father's script, and underneath it all, something that made her gasp. Photographs, old ones. Her father, looking young, perhaps 25, standing before a grand mansion, dressed in a suit that was more expensive than anything she had ever seen him in. In his whole life, surrounded by individuals who appeared to own the entire world. She turned to the next picture, which was a newspaper clipping, yellowed with age, but still legible. Hartwell Air disappears following a family disagreement. She noted the date, which was 34 years ago. The name printed below the headline was James Hartwell III. She looked at the photograph once more. It was her father, but the name was incorrect. Her hands trembled as she picked up the documents. The first page detailed a legal trust that had been created 28 years prior and was updated just 3 weeks before her father's death. The beneficiary was listed as Maya Richardson. The trustee was Victor Kane. She quickly read through legal language that she did not completely grasp. She saw phrases like irrevocable and protected interest and a spousal exclusion clause. Then she noticed a number written at the bottom of the third page. She read it a second time and then a third because it seemed impossible. Her father, the man who had worked cleaning floors for 35 years, had left her a sum of money that was beyond belief. It was not a house, or some savings, but an entire empire. With unsteady hands, she opened the envelope. The letter within was on simple paper. There was no logo or letterhead, only her father's neat handwriting, which slanted slightly to the right just as it always did when he was writing carefully. Baby girl, if you are reading this, it means I am gone. And I regret that I could not tell you this in person, but certain truths become clearer once you have lived enough to appreciate their importance. My name was not always James Richardson. I was born James Hartwell III, the heir to a family that prioritized legacy above love and control above character. My father established an empire. My grandfather made it larger, and I was supposed to carry it on. There were to be no questions, no straying from the path, and no personal choices. When I was 26, I met your mother. She was working at a bookstore near my university. She wore her hair in a braid and would read poetry on her lunch breaks. She made me laugh in a way I never knew I was missing. She was not interested in my family name or the money. She was interested in the person I was when no one else was around. I wanted to ask her to marry me. My family refused, not because they thought she was not worthy, but because she did not fit into their master plan. They were interested in alliances, mergers, and arrangements that would look impressive in financial publications. So, they presented me with a choice. I could have the fortune, or I could have the future I truly desired. I chose her, and they made certain that I would pay a price for it. Maya paused her reading to wipe away tears, then continued. They cut me off completely, disowned me in public, and removed my name from every family document as if I had never been born. I changed my name, found a job that did not require a background check or connections. I started a new life with nothing but the woman I adored and the conviction that a truly good life is not built on money. It is built on meaning. Your mother and I were together for 6 years before she passed away while giving birth to you. And those 6 years were the most fulfilling of my entire life. But here is the secret they never discovered. The one detail I took care of before I walked away from it all. I did not actually give up the fortune. I completely restructured it. I concealed it within such complex legal safeguards that even they were unable to get to it. I transferred control to someone I had complete faith in, and then I waited. I did this not because I sought revenge, but because I had a feeling that one day you would be the one who needed it. The money has been growing quietly and strategically, overseen by individuals who know that true wealth is not about what you spend. It is about having security and having options. I wanted to give you the strength to defend yourself from the kind of people I left behind. They are people who see worth in you only when they believe you are useful. I wanted you to grow up free from that world. I needed you to discover yourself before you discovered what you possessed. I wanted you to choose love for genuine reasons and to forge your character when nobody was looking. Now that you know the truth, there is something else you must grasp. This is not about changing who you are. It is about giving you the means to remain exactly yourself, without compromise, without fear, and without ever needing anyone else's approval. Maya put the letter down. Her father had not been hiding from his fortune. He had been shielding her from it until the very moment she would need it the most. The other documents explained everything in language that felt both cold and precise, titled Irrevocable Trust Agreement. It was created 6 months after her father adopted his new name. The agreement was updated every 5 years. Its last revision was 3 weeks before he passed away, immediately after he received the diagnosis that his time was short. Maya read through the document with care, making herself absorb every detail. This trust was not simply cash in an account. It was a fortress constructed from legal terminology and careful long-term planning. Each asset was secured within legal entities, completely safe from lawsuits, divorce proceedings, or any creditors. Her name appeared nowhere in public records. There were no tax filings or property deeds that could lead back to her. Victor Kane, the man who had presented her with the box, was named as the trustee. He was granted complete power to manage, invest, and safeguard all of it. However, he could not use a single dollar of it without her written permission after her 25th birthday. She had turned 25 just 3 months earlier. One particular section caught her eye. It was called the Spousal Exclusion Clause. She read it a second time, trying to decipher the complex legal phrasing. Then, the meaning became clear. If she were to marry, her husband would have absolutely no claim to any of it. The assets belonged to her and her alone, completely untouchable, for all time. This was not a punishment or a sign of distrust in a future husband. It was the ultimate form of protection. Her father had witnessed too many wealthy families destroyed by bitter divorces. He had constructed a barrier around her future that no one could ever get through. Not a fortune hunter, not a handsome con man, not even a good-hearted husband in a marriage that simply did not work out. A spouse could claim nothing. Not the original assets, not the income they generated, nothing at all. The trust was hers, shielded by its very design from anyone who might attempt to get to it through her. Her father had intentionally written it this way because he knew. He did not know about Marcus specifically, but he knew about the possibility of men like him. A man who would appear with a charming smile and endless promises, only to vanish when life became difficult. The trust was designed to provide her with money at any time. But once she received those funds, they became her own individual assets, legally defined as separate property. Marcus would never be able to touch them. He could not get them in a divorce, not ever. Her father had anticipated this. He had not known the exact circumstances, but he had recognized the pattern, and he had dedicated 30 years to ensuring that no one could ever wound her in the way his own family had tried to wound him. There were other rules as well. There were sections about her future children, safeguards in case she ever became unable to make decisions, and guidance on how the fortune should be used if she decided to use it. A single phrase was repeated throughout the entire document. The beneficiary maintains sole and absolute discretion. In simple terms, it was all hers to decide what to do with. No one could dictate how she spent it, how she invested it, or if she gave it away, and no one even had to be aware that it existed. She thought of Marcus, and the divorce papers, he said, would be ready by the end of the week. She remembered how he presented it as if he were doing her a kindness. He was completely clueless. He had no idea who her father truly was. He had no idea what she now possessed. He had no idea that the woman he was abandoning had gained more influence in a single afternoon than he would ever gather in his whole life. The issue was not if she had the power to retaliate. The issue was if she even wanted to. Her father's words replayed in her thoughts. True strength is understanding that you do not have to use your power. But she was not entirely convinced. Power does not make a grand entrance. It is patient. And so, she would be patient. She lifted the letter once more. 2 more pages remained. Now that you know what you possess, you need to understand something far more important. What you are. This money is not your identity. It never will be. You were built from different materials, from strong values, from personal sacrifice, from witnessing what occurs when a person chooses love over a legacy. I did not raise you with so little to make you suffer. I raised you in simplicity to instruct you. You understand the feeling of earning something, of being patient, of living without. You know how to make decisions based on what is important, not on what is convenient. Most people who are born with wealth never learn that lesson. They mistake their resources for their character. They believe money gives them power, when in reality, it only makes them loud. You are not like them. You know that strength is not about what you possess. It is about what you do when you possess nothing at all. And now that you possess everything, I need you to hold on to that lesson, because this is what will happen next. People will discover the truth eventually. It will not be immediate, but it will happen someday. And when that day comes, you will see their true selves. The people who were with you when you had nothing will remain with you when you have everything. The people who abandoned you will try to return, and the people who misjudged you will suddenly want a second chance. Allow them, not because you are indebted to them in any way, but because observing people reveal their true nature is one of the most priceless educations life can offer. Some people will be upset that you kept this from them. Let them feel that way. You are not obligated to give anyone access to your finances or reasons for your privacy. Some people will expect you to transform, to become arrogant, careless, or privileged. Disprove them by continuing to be exactly the person you have always been. And then there will be some who will completely misjudge you. They will assume your quiet nature is a weakness. They will confuse your kindness for a lack of intelligence. They will be convinced that because you do not display your wealth, you have nothing of value to show. Those are the ones to be careful of. Not because they can harm you financially, you are now shielded from that. They are dangerous because they will challenge your character, and your reaction will define the kind of person you ultimately become. So, this is my true gift to you. Patience, the power to endure discomfort without reacting. To allow people to believe what they wish while you create something they cannot harm. To remain silent when the world expects you to shout. Seeking revenge is simple. Any fool with money can ruin someone. But self-control, restraint, the choice not to wield power even when you hold it, that is exceptional. That is a true legacy. I love you, my baby girl. I have always loved you. I will always love you. You are going to be perfectly fine. Dad. Maya folded the letter with great care and slipped it back into its envelope. She did not weep, she did not get angry, and she did not call Marcus to inform him that he had just made the biggest error of his life. She simply remained seated, her hands resting on her belly. Feeling her daughter shift beneath her ribs, she decided then that her father was correct. Some fights are not worth having because the people who should lose do not need your help to fail. They are perfectly capable of destroying themselves. Victor came back 20 minutes later. He tapped gently on the door before coming in, allowing her a moment to collect herself. "Do you have any questions?" he asked softly. "Just one," Maya replied. "How much is there?" He took a seat across from her and produced a single page with a summary she could easily follow. It listed stocks, bonds, real estate properties, private equity, and international funds. The investments were spread across 12 different countries. The assets had been gathered cautiously over 34 years. They were managed discreetly, without any flash or recklessness. The total value as of the last financial quarter was $5.2 billion. The number just sat there on the paper, a fact that her mind could not process. She looked at it, read it again, and tried to reconcile it with the father who raised her in a tiny one-bedroom apartment and sent her to school, with lunches packed in old grocery bags. "That is impossible," she whispered. "That is a conservative estimate," Victor said. "Your father avoided high-risk investments. He valued stability far more than rapid growth. If he had been willing to take more chances, this figure would be substantially larger." She felt dizzy. "What am I supposed to do with all of it?" Victor offered a sad but gentle smile. "Anything you wish. That is the whole idea. You could live on the income it generates and never use the original amount. You could give it all away tomorrow. You could act as if it does not even exist. It belongs to you entirely. Does anyone else know about this? Only me, and now you. Your father was very careful about that. She thought again of Marcus, of the divorce he was already setting in motion, and of how he offered to help support the baby as if he were granting her a favor. He was completely unaware, and she had no intention of telling him. "I want to keep this private," she said with resolve. "Nobody else needs to know." Victor nodded. "That is a very wise choice. When you are ready, we can arrange for distributions. Until that time, everything will remain exactly as it is now." She got up, shook his hand, and left the bank the same way she had come in, alone, unsure and grieving, but fundamentally changed. Because she was now aware of something that Marcus was not. The woman he had abandoned was not broken. She was safeguarded. And patience, just as her father had taught her, was the most formidable weapon anyone could possess. 3 weeks after that day, the courthouse pictures appeared online. Marcus and Isabel, married in a hurry, very publicly, smiling as if they had just won a prize. The comment section quickly filled with reactions. Wow, that was fast. Did his wife not just lose her father? Some people truly have no decency. Maya saw the pictures and felt the sharp pain, but she did not react. She simply moved forward. She went to doctor's appointments, prepared the baby's room, and read her father's letter again and again until every single word was committed to memory. Whenever someone asked how she was holding up, her answer was always the same, delivered with a calm smile. "I am fine." And the truth is, she was. It was not that the betrayal felt like nothing, but she understood a lesson Marcus never would. True strength does not perform for a crowd. It simply waits for the right moment. Think about it. Real power is silent until it has to be used. Most people shout their newfound influence from the rooftops, but those who have truly earned it know better. Marcus moved quickly. Their divorce was complete in just 43 days. He remarried only 12 days later. Maya signed every document without a single protest. She requested no spousal support. She did not battle for what little they owned. She simply took her personal belongings, which amounted to very little by law, and allowed him to leave believing he had handled the situation with maturity. He made a single post on social media, a carefully crafted message about embracing the future and choosing joy. The comments poured in, a mix of praise and disgust. Some said, "Good for you, man," and "Life is too short." Others were furious, writing, "You could not even wait 6 months? Her father just passed away." Another added, "This is exactly why no one believes in marriage anymore." Isabel also made a post. It was a picture of her hand, showing off a brand new ring. The caption read, "When you know, you know." The internet certainly had its say, and its opinions were harsh. Maya turned into a cautionary tale, told over dinner. She was the pregnant wife whose husband abandoned her, the woman who remained silent through it all, the one everyone was watching, just waiting for the moment she would finally crumble. Her husband abandoned her immediately following her father's funeral. The story was seen as sympathetic, tragic, and slightly pathetic. She learned about the public reaction from others. Friends struggled to find the right words. Acquaintances sent uncomfortable text messages. Strangers online debated if Marcus was a terrible person or just being honest with his emotions. She never set the record straight, never defended her side, and never explained that she was actually doing fine. In fact, better than ever. She just lowered her gaze and waited, remembering a lesson her father had taught her that few people ever learn. Public perception is fleeting, but a person's true character lasts forever. And in that moment, Marcus was revealing his true character to the world. She did not have to utter a single word. By the 7th month of her pregnancy, the online chatter had largely faded away. People found new scandals and fresher dramas to discuss, focusing on someone else's messy separation. Maya filled her days by assembling nursery furniture, folding baby clothes, and reading books on childbirth that both scared and comforted her. Victor would call once each week to check on her, ensuring she had everything she required. She always told him yes, even when the reality was far more complex. She was not having money problems. Victor had arranged for a small monthly payment that took care of her rent, food, and medical expenses without drawing any attention. But she was having a hard time emotionally, not because of Marcus, but because of his complete silence. Her father was gone. Her husband was gone. The only one who could have possibly understood her situation was a man she would never get to know. It was the version of her father who had faced the same impossible decision 30 years before. Then, on a Tuesday in late September, a package arrived. It was a cream-colored envelope made of heavy paper with her name written in beautiful handwriting and no return address. She opened it with care. Inside was an invitation that read, "You are cordially invited to the inaugural event of the Richardson Hartwell Foundation." Her breath hitched in her throat. She read the words a second time. Richardson Hartwell was her father's true name, and it was her name as well. The event was set for October 14th. It was a black tie affair at a private location with a select number of guests. At the bottom, in smaller letters, it said, "Your presence is requested as the Foundation's primary honoree." She had no clue what this meant. Victor had not said anything about a foundation. Her father's letter had not mentioned one either. She took out her phone and dialed Victor's number. He picked up after 2 rings. "You received the invitation," he stated. It was not a question. "What is all this?" "This was your father's last project. He planned it for 2 years before he became ill. I have been carrying out his wishes since he passed away. It is time." "Time for what?" Victor paused for a moment, then said softly, "It is time for everyone to know who you truly are." Her heart began to race. "I did not consent to this. You are not required to do anything that makes you uncomfortable. But the event is going forward and the guest list is already complete. Who is on the list?" There was another silence. Everyone who should be there, including Marcus. The official announcement was made 3 days later. A professional and polished press release was sent to local news outlets and nonprofit groups throughout the state. It announced, "The Richardson Hartwell Foundation launches with a $50 million endowment to support educational access, career development, and assistance for single-parent families." The newly formed Richardson Hartwell Foundation is preparing to launch its very first fundraising gala next month. The foundation was established to celebrate the legacy of James Richardson, a man who spent over 3 decades helping his community in subtle but profound ways. The local paper ran a photo of her father, but not in his usual custodian uniform. It was a picture from years ago, showing him in a fine suit, looking like a man who commanded boardrooms. The people who knew him were completely taken aback. "Wait a minute, that is the handyman from the elementary school. I had no idea he was wealthy. Who is backing this foundation?" The official announcement was silent on that question. It named Victor Kane as the executive director and listed a board of advisors filled with names that nobody in town had ever heard of. The announcement also mentioned an anonymous founding donor whose generous gift had made the whole project a reality. The town's reaction was guarded. People were intrigued, but also doubtful. $50 million does not just materialize out of thin air. And James Richardson, the man they knew from mopping hallways and fixing pipes, did not seem like someone with connections to that kind of fortune. Theories began to spread like wildfire. Some believed it was an elaborate con. Others were convinced a celebrity or a politician was using her father's good name for their own purposes. A few even thought Maya received a large settlement for Marcus and was using the money to repair her reputation. Not a single person guessed the truth, because the truth was simply too unbelievable. Maya observed the situation develop from afar. She made no comments, offered no explanations, and did not participate in the widespread guessing. Victor managed all the details. He handled media questions, event planning, and coordinating with vendors. The only thing she had to do was attend, but the guest list weighed on her mind. Victor had sent it to her through a secure email. It contained 200 names of donors, community figures, local officials, and people her father had known throughout his career. And, near the end of the list, was Marcus Chun plus a guest. A knot formed in her stomach. Why was he invited? She asked Victor on the phone. Your father specifically asked for him to be there. What? He left detailed instructions. He listed specific names. Marcus was on that list. That makes no sense at all. Dad passed away before Marcus even asked for a divorce. Your father was very insightful, Victor said with care. He had a way of seeing things before they unfolded. She thought about that, trying to make sense of it. Her father had been aware, maybe not of the exact circumstances, but of the possibility. And he had arranged for Marcus to be present on the night the truth would be revealed. It was not for payback, but for a lesson. I am not sure if I can go through with this, Maya confessed. You do not have to, Victor assured her, but if you decide not to go, you will always wonder what might have been. She thought about her father's letter, about being patient, and about letting people show their true colors. He is going to bring Isabel, she said in a low voice. Probably. People are going to whisper. They are already whispering. She let out a long breath, felt the baby move within her, and rested a hand on her belly. Okay, she finally said. I will be there. Good, Victor answered, because this event is not about him. It is about you, and it is time for people to see the distinction. The location was breathtaking. It was a historic mansion that had been transformed into an event hall. Chandeliers hung like cascades of frozen water. The floors were so shiny they mirrored the ceiling. The tables were adorned with tablecloths that cost more than what most people pay for rent each month. Maya showed up 30 minutes before the event was scheduled to begin. Victor greeted her at a private entrance. He looked at her once and broke into a smile. You look absolutely perfect, he told her. She had picked her outfit with great care. It was an emerald green gown with a high waistline to fit her very pregnant figure. Her hair was styled in a simple pullback. She wore very little jewelry, except for one notable item, a diamond necklace from the safe deposit box. It was antique, tasteful, and modest, unless you recognized its true worth. She did not know its monetary value. She only knew it had once belonged to her grandmother. This was the woman her father's family had cut out of their lives along with him. Wearing it felt like the right thing to do. How are you feeling? Victor asked. I am terrified, she confessed. Good. That proves you are paying attention. The guests began to filter in. Maya observed them from a secluded room with a one-way window that looked out onto the main ballroom. She spotted familiar faces, people from her father's church, his old colleagues, and neighbors who had known him for years. And then she spotted Marcus. He entered with Isabel on his arm. Isabel was dressed in a vibrant red dress, looking bold and self-assured, the type of woman who enters a room and expects all eyes on her. Marcus seemed out of place, not because of the fancy event, but because he had no idea why he was there. He searched the crowd for Maya. He probably could not see her. Isabel guided him to the bar. They got their drinks, smiled at strangers, and acted like a happy, successful couple. Maya could feel her own heartbeat in her throat. Victor suddenly appeared next to her. "You do not need to go out there just yet. We can wait until the main program begins." "No," Maya said softly. "I want to enter just like any other guest." "Are you certain?" She gave a firm nod, remembering another one of her father's important lessons. Being confident is not about feeling prepared. It is about taking the next step, even when you are not. She exited the private room, walked along a corridor, paused at the threshold of the grand hall, took a deep breath, and then walked through the doors. The room did not fall silent all at once, but the atmosphere certainly changed. Have you ever seen someone so badly underestimated that their quiet revenge changes everything? That's what happened to Maya. This story is about the quiet power of character, and it is a lesson for anyone who thinks money is the only thing that matters. So stay with us if you believe in second chances built on truth. The story begins as conversations in a crowded room suddenly stop. Every eye turns to the door, not for a celebrity, but for a woman who is very clearly pregnant and completely alone. Her ex-husband Marcus saw her. His face shifted from surprise to confusion and then to panic. His new partner Isabel whispered something, but he just stared, frozen. Maya ignored him completely. With quiet dignity, she walked to a reserved seat, sat down, and folded her hands on her lap. "Just breathe." An older woman with a kind face approached. "You must be Maya," she said gently. "I am. Your father talked about you constantly. I am so sorry for your loss. Thank you." The woman gave her a warm smile. "He would be so incredibly proud of you tonight." A lump formed in Maya's throat, and all she could do was nod. One by one, others approached to share their sympathies and memories of her dad. But on the other side of the room, Marcus was stuck in his chair. A chilling thought was dawning on him. This elegant event was not just something she was attending. It was her event, and he was completely unprepared for what was about to happen. The room lights went down, and a microphone was set up on the stage. A man named Victor walked to the podium. "Good evening," he started. "Thank you for coming. We are not just here to start a foundation. We are here to celebrate a man who lived with integrity every moment of his life, especially when he thought no one else could see." Victor spoke about her father's dedication, his gentle nature, and his reliability. Heads nodded in agreement around the room, and some people dabbed at their tears. Then, Victor changed his tone. "What the majority of you are not aware of," he said, "is that 34 years ago, James Richardson made a decision. He abandoned a world of immense riches and high society because he would not give up on the person he loved. He changed his name, built a new life from scratch, a life founded on principle, not inheritance." A quiet buzz of confusion spread through the audience. Marcus now leaned in, paying close attention. That decision meant losing everything his family held dear. Victor went on. But in return, he gained something priceless, his honor and a daughter who was given his values, not his money. Victor stopped for a moment, allowing his words to sink in. The Richardson Hartwell Foundation was created because James never lost sight of his past. He worked for 30 years to ensure his daughter could create something important, free from the weight of family pressure or privilege. Victor then motioned towards Maya. "It is my great privilege to present the founder and main supporter of this foundation, Maya Richardson." A polite clapping started, which quickly grew into loud applause. Maya rose from her seat and walked to the stage with measured, confident steps. She watched the look on Marcus's face transform right before her eyes. His confusion was turning into understanding, and that understanding quickly twisted into horror as he finally put all the pieces together. Richardson Hartwell was her father's actual name. The $50 million fund, the foundation, it was all her. Isabel glanced at him, bewildered by how he was acting. He offered no reason. He just watched the woman he had abandoned. The woman who was 6 months pregnant, mourning her father, and who he thought was defeated. She was now on a stage, before 200 people, all of whom now knew a truth he had missed. She was not a broken person. She was the heir to a legacy. Maya got to the microphone and made a small adjustment. The audience became completely quiet. She did not even glance at Marcus. Her focus was on the faces of those who had cared for her father, the people who came to honor his memory. Then she started to talk. Her voice was confident and measured, not dramatic or theatrical, just perfectly clear. My father taught me that the most significant choices we make are the ones that no one ever sees. She paused, allowing the weight of her words to settle. He taught me that love is not about what is convenient. It is about being present, especially when it is difficult, especially when nobody is looking, and especially when you have every good reason to turn your back. A few heads in the crowd nodded slowly. He also taught me that having money without having principles is just empty noise. He said, real influence is not what you possess. It is what you choose to do with it when no one is making you do a thing. She looked down for a moment, gathering her thoughts. Most of you knew my father as the custodian, the maintenance man, the person who came in before sunrise and left long after dark, never once looking for praise. She raised her eyes to meet the crowd's. What you did not know was that he was born into one of the richest families on the East Coast. He was meant to take over a corporate empire. He walked away from all of it because the people who controlled that fortune told him that his love was not worth the price. Murmurs and gasps spread through the room. He proved every one of them wrong. Her voice remained strong. For 34 years, he lived a life that showed true worth is not measured by your bank account. It is measured by your integrity. And when he passed away, he left me something so much more important than money. She paused again. He gave me a choice. The room was silent. I could have kept all of this a secret. I could have taken the inheritance he left and vanished. No one would have ever found out. No one would have been bothered by it. She made eye contact with the audience. But my father did not conceal his fortune out of shame. He concealed it because he wanted me to understand my own identity before I understood my own net worth. She let that idea sink in. And since I now understand both, I am making the choice he would have made. I will create something with purpose. I will assist those who have been overlooked. I will provide for families who lack a financial cushion. At that moment, Victor set a folder on the stand next to her. The Richardson Hartwell Foundation is launching with a starting fund of $50 million, Maya announced. And it is structured to grow and have a lasting impact for generations. The crowd began to clap, but she held up a hand. She had more to say. That $50 million is less than 1% of the entire trust my father created for me. The clapping died instantly. People started looking around, trying to calculate the true amount in their heads. The most recent valuation of the trust is $5.2 billion. A deep quiet fell over the room. It was not the silence of surprise, but the silence of a profound realization. She did not look proud or smug. She simply delivered the information as a statement of fact. I am sharing this with you not to show off, she said, but to be perfectly clear about one thing. My father did not teach me how to be wealthy. He taught me how to be accountable, and that is precisely my plan. She then moved away from the microphone. The applause that erupted was not just respectful. It was a roar. The entire room was on its feet, clapping, with some people openly weeping. Maya calmly left the stage and went back to her chair. On the other side of the room, Marcus was motionless, he was pale, and his knuckles were white from gripping the table. Isabel was trying to talk to him, but he could not hear her. He was busy calculating. The woman he had abandoned, the one he assumed had no resources, was now in control of more money than he could imagine in 10 lifetimes. He had left her, not because of who she was, but because he had never taken the time to truly see her. Her story is a powerful reminder of what can happen when we judge people without knowing their full truth. As soon as Maya was off the stage, Marcus tried to make a quick exit. He stood up, grabbed Isabel's hand, and mumbled something about needing fresh air. But Victor was already there. He was not physically stopping them, just standing near the doorway with a serene smile on his face. It was a calm, all-knowing look that said everything without a single word. Marcus stopped in his tracks. Isabel looked completely puzzled. What is happening? He could not respond, because what words were there? That his ex-wife, from only 8 weeks ago, the one he abandoned during her time of grief and pregnancy, was now one of the richest individuals in the entire state. That he had thrown away a future with billions of dollars because he was too impatient to endure a difficult time. That all of his choices for the last 6 months were built on a complete misjudgment of who truly held the power. Isabel pulled on his sleeve. Marcus, please say something. He collapsed back into his chair like a puppet with its strings cut. All around them, the room buzzed with excitement about the new foundation, Maya's poise, and her father's amazing life. A nearby guest remarked, "Can you believe someone would give up that kind of fortune just for love? You do not see that every day." Someone else added, "And to raise a daughter to be so humble with all that, that is even more unusual." Marcus heard it all. Every comment was a sharp jab, highlighting his own failures. He looked over at Maya. A crowd had formed around her, with people offering thanks, embraces, and encouragement. She seemed exhausted, but composed. She never once looked over at him, not because she was angry, but because he was no longer significant in her world. Finally, the pieces clicked into place for Isabel. "Hold on," she said, her voice slow with realization. "That is the woman you divorced." He just nodded. "The one you told me was left with nothing." He stayed silent. She drew away from him, her eyes wide as she stared. "Marcus, what did you actually know about this?" "Nothing," he admitted in a low voice. "I did not know any of it." Her eyes narrowed. "You never asked her." He watched her face and could see the gears turning in her mind. She was reassessing everything. It was not anger he saw. It was cold calculation. She was questioning her decision to be with a man who could make such a monumental error in judgment. He recognized that look. He understood it. It was the same way he must have made Maya feel watching a partner reevaluate your worth based on a change in circumstance. The shame was overwhelming. "I have to go speak with her," he announced abruptly. "Do not do it," Isabel cautioned. "I need to, Marcus. Just let it be." But he was already up and walking in Maya's direction. Victor stepped in his path, his movement fluid and his tone polite but unyielding. "She is not taking visitors right now. I only need 5 minutes of her time. She has no interest in speaking with you." Marcus felt his jaw clench. "You do not have the right to decide for her." "I do not need to," Victor replied calmly. "She specifically requested that I help you understand. There is nothing left to talk about." Each word was like a heavy door slamming shut. It was absolute. It was irreversible. Marcus just stood there, powerless, as the woman he had so badly misjudged went on talking with people who were truly important to her. He had hoped for a final conversation, some kind of reason, perhaps even a chance at pardon. But Maya owed him none of those things, and she was not offering them. After about 10 minutes, she slipped out a side door without any fanfare. She was simply gone. As Marcus watched her leave, he finally grasped, for the very first time, the feeling of being utterly and completely insignificant. Naomi Grace Richardson entered the world on a Thursday. She weighed 7 pounds and 4 ounces, with dark hair and her grandfather's eyes. In a hospital room that felt strangely peaceful, Maya held her daughter for the very first time. There was no husband or family crowding the hallway, only Victor, who had insisted on being there. A nurse named Petra even stayed after her shift had ended, believing no one should experience such a monumental moment alone. "She is perfect," Petra whispered. Maya could only nod as tears streamed down her face. Her father should have been there to hold his granddaughter. He should have been able to see the life he worked so hard to protect finally blossom. The baby's weight in her arms felt like a promise fulfilled, a future he had secured even if he was not there to witness it. Maya gazed at Naomi's face, a flawless miniature of pure potential. "My little girl," she murmured, "I have you." But her father was gone, and Maya knew she would have to be enough for them both. She looked down at Naomi again, gently tracing the outline of her tiny fingers, committing every detail of her face to memory. "Your grandfather loved you long before you were born," she whispered softly. "And he made certain that you would grow up safe, protected, and free." Naomi let out a yawn, impossibly small and perfectly whole. Victor moved closer, his expression full of grandfatherly warmth as he looked at the baby. "James would have been so proud," he said quietly. "You did well, Maya." She let out a long breath. "I feel like all I did was survive. That is more than what most people can do." She remained in the hospital for 2 days, learning the rhythms of nursing, changing diapers, and somehow managing on just 2 hours of sleep. Marcus sent flowers, a generic bouquet, with a card that read, "Congratulations, wishing you both well." She tossed them in the trash, not with anger, but with the flat certainty that they were meaningless. They were an empty gesture from a man who had already chosen to be distant. Around that same time, Isabel posted a photograph on her social media. It showed her and Marcus at brunch, both smiling. The caption read, "Choosing joy every day." Maya did not even glance at the comments. She had more important things to concentrate on. When she finally brought Naomi home, the apartment felt transformed. It seemed smaller and more silent, yet it was also full in a way it had never been before. She placed the bassinet beside her bed and hung the mobile her father had purchased months before his illness took over. He had carved the wooden animals himself during late nights when he could not find sleep. She had discovered them in his apartment after he passed away, wrapped with care, and with a note attached that said, "For when she arrives." Now they spun slowly above his granddaughter, casting gentle shadows on the wall. Maya settled into the rocking chair, holding Naomi close. She sang a song her father used to sing to her as a child when she was restless. And for the first time since his death, she felt something that resembled peace. It was not because the sorrow had vanished, but because she finally grasped what he had been trying to teach her. A legacy is not what you leave behind in things. It is who you raise to move it forward. The foundation expanded more rapidly than anyone could have predicted. In just 6 months, they had funded scholarships for 40 students, launched a center for workforce training, and formed partnerships with 3 local nonprofits to offer emergency aid to single parents dealing with eviction or medical bills. Maya managed it all without fanfare. There were no press tours, no ribbon-cutting events, and no speeches unless they were unavoidable. She simply showed up, made the important decisions, signed the checks that changed people's lives, and then went home to her daughter. People began to recognize her, not as a public figure, but as someone who was making a real difference. A woman in her late 30s approached her in a grocery store one day with tears in her eyes. "You paid for my son's tuition," she said, her voice trembling. "I do not know if you remember him, but he is the first one in our family to ever go to college. It is all because of you." Maya offered a gentle smile. "It is because of your son. He earned his place." "No," the woman insisted. "It is because someone believed he was worth the investment. Thank you." These kinds of moments happened frequently. She received letters, emails, and had chance meetings with people whose entire lives had been altered because the foundation was there for them. Maya saved every single letter. She would read them on difficult days when she started to doubt if any of it truly made a difference. It did. Not because of the money itself, but because of what that money allowed to happen. Her father had been correct. Wealth without a clear purpose is nothing more than noise. But wealth used with intention, now that was a legacy. By the time Naomi celebrated her first birthday, the foundation had grown to serve 3 counties. Victor was in charge of operations, while Maya guided the vision. Gradually, people stopped asking about the source of the funds. They were simply grateful that the support continued to arrive. Marcus heard about her work, sometimes through mutual friends, on social media, and in the quiet, unavoidable way her name would appear in circles that made him feel uneasy. He made one attempt to donate, sending a check for $5,000. He mailed it straight to the foundation's office. Victor sent it right back. There was no note of explanation, only the uncashed check and a single word stamped on a slip of paper, "Declined." Marcus never tried again. Isabella left him 14 months after the gala. Her departure was not dramatic, just practical. She had come to understand what Maya had figured out long ago. Marcus was the type of man who would trade up when he thought he found something superior, and then trade down the instant he knew he had made a mistake. She had no interest in becoming the next person he misjudged. Their divorce was swift and quiet. Nobody paid much attention, because by that point, Marcus had become exactly what Maya had foreseen: irrelevant. It was not because she had actively ruined him, but because she had simply built a life without him. In doing so, she had turned him into a minor detail in a story that was never really about him in the first place. Marcus saw Naomi once, completely by chance. He was walking through a park near his office when he noticed them. Maya was pushing a stroller. Naomi, who looked to be about 18 months old, was pointing at birds and chattering with excitement. Maya looked different. She seemed stronger and more at ease in her own skin than she ever had when they were married. He almost approached them, almost said hello, but then he saw Victor was there too, walking beside them. Victor was laughing at something Naomi said, fully present in a way Marcus had never been. He hung back, observing from a distance. Naomi had Maya's smile and her grandfather's eyes. She looked healthy, joyful, and deeply loved. Marcus felt a strange tightening in his chest. It was not quite jealousy, but something closer to recognition. He had been given the opportunity to be a part of this, to be the man pushing that stroller and hearing his daughters laugh. He could have built something that mattered, but he had chosen a different path. It was not because Maya was not enough, but because he had told himself she was too much trouble. He had wanted something easy, convenient, and simple. What he ended up with was empty. Isabel was gone. His professional reputation had taken a series of quiet blows he did not understand until people stopped returning his calls. The life he thought he was upgrading to felt more hollow with each passing year. In that same time, Maya had constructed something undeniable. She did it not with loudness or revenge, but with quiet persistence. The foundation continued to grow. Her name kept appearing in contexts of significance, like education panels, nonprofit boards, and community planning committees. She never sought out recognition, but it found her anyway because people are drawn to competence. And she had demonstrated hers time and time again. Marcus, in contrast, had stalled. His career hit a plateau. His relationships remained shallow. His life felt like a performance he was putting on rather than something he was actually living. Sometimes he thought about reaching out, sending a message of apology, trying to make her understand. But what could he possibly say? I am sorry I abandoned you when things became difficult. I am sorry I failed to see your true worth. I am sorry I was too proud to ask for help. None of it could change a thing. Maya had moved forward completely and permanently, and he was left alone with a lesson that had come far too late to do him any good. The years went by. Naomi began kindergarten. The foundation marked its 5th anniversary. Maya's name appeared in a business journal profile with the headline, "The Philanthropist You Have Never Heard Of." The article mentioned her father, the foundation, and all its work. It mentioned Marcus only once, in passing. Richardson was previously married, but has been a single mother since her daughter's birth, choosing to focus on family and philanthropy rather than public relationships. Just one sentence, placing him firmly in footnote territory. He read it over twice and felt a sharp sting. It was not because the words were cruel, but because they were entirely accurate. He had been reduced to a minor detail. A brief phase. He was a person who had been there for a moment and then left before anything of consequence ever happened. And the most painful part of it all was that he had earned it. Maya stood inside her father's old apartment one final time before the lease officially ended. It had been 6 years since he passed away. 6 years of building, of growing, and of discovering who she was when no one else was there to tell her. Naomi was spending the afternoon with Victor, giving Maya the space she needed to close this chapter by herself. She walked through the rooms, which now felt smaller than she remembered. She ran her hand over the kitchen counter where her father had prepared thousands of meals, and she sat on the couch where he had slept for 16 years, just so she could have the bedroom. The apartment was completely empty now. The furniture had been donated and his belongings sorted through. The only things left were memories and a single envelope she had been saving, the one Victor had kept for her until she was ready. She opened it with care. Baby girl, if you are reading this, it means enough time has gone by for you to truly understand what I am about to tell you. Loss is not a punishment. It is a form of permission. It is permission to find out who you are. When there is no one left to place their expectations on you. It is permission to build something that reflects your own values instead of chasing someone else's approval. It is permission to walk away from people who are unable to see your worth, not out of anger, but because you are far too busy creating something better. You have spent these years proving something that I knew all along. Character is not about what you possess. It is about what you choose to do when you have everything. Some people will say you were lucky, that you were given wealth and opportunity. Let them think that. What they will never know is that wealth without wisdom is just a pile of money. You had wisdom long before you had any money. I am so proud of you. Not for your success, but because you always stayed kind. You always stayed humble. You stayed you. That is your real inheritance. With love, Dad. She folded the letter with great care, placed it back in the envelope, and wiped the tears from her eyes. Then she locked the door to her old apartment for the very last time and walked out into the bright afternoon sun. Naomi was already at Victor's office, and she ran toward her as soon as she saw her. Mama! Maya lifted her up into a big hug, holding her close. Did you have a good time? We went for ice cream. Of course you did, Maya said, smiling over at Victor. He just shrugged with a playful grin. I am claiming grandpa privileges. The three of them walked to the car together. Naomi was chattering away about her day. Victor was asking her silly questions that made her laugh. As Maya buckled her daughter into the car seat, she looked at this amazing little person. She would never know her grandfather, but she would grow up surrounded by his values. And in that moment, Maya felt something she had not felt for years. Gratitude, not for the money she had been given, but for the person she had been allowed to become. Because her father had been right all along. Losing him was not the end of her story. It was permission. It was permission to finally choose the person she wanted to be, without apologies, without regrets, and without needing anyone else to approve. And she knew she had chosen well. If this story made you think about loyalty, patience, or what it means to be responsible, subscribing means you are choosing stories that help you grow, not just pass the time. Do not just watch, learn from it. Hey there. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. We are so grateful for your support. If you enjoyed this story, please remember to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment for us below. We would be thrilled to hear what you think. And guess what? The story is not over yet. Just click on the video you see right here on your screen to enjoy another amazing story. Believe me, you are not going to want to miss it. Thank you again for being such a wonderful part of our community. Until we meet again, stay curious and keep searching for the stories that truly move you. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to bring you meaningful lessons and inspiration.